There is a moment when a room has not changed, yet you know you can no longer live inside it in the same way. The walls are where they were. The familiar voices continue. The old explanations still arrive on time. But something in you has stopped agreeing. That moment is where this journey begins, not with a vision in the sky, not with a new prophet, not with a date circled on a calendar. The return of Sophia begins as a fracture in the spell of the familiar. Ancient Gnostic writers did not leave us one single biography of Sophia. They left a constellation of stories. In some, she belongs to the fullness called the pleroma. In others, her movement helps explain how ignorance, matter, and the lower rulers came to be. Yet across these different versions, one pattern remains. Wisdom descends, becomes obscured, and must be recognized again. The myth is cosmic, but its pressure can be felt inside ordinary consciousness. The first concrete key is not the word Sophia. It is a word that appears in the secret book of John, Epinoia. Pronounce it Epinoia. Translators render it through ideas such as insight, reflection, intention, or awakened thought. In the story, luminous Epinoia enters the human drama and awakens Adam from the sleep imposed by the rulers. The text does not describe a person becoming clever. It describes awareness, remembering that the world which shaped it does not own its source. That distinction matters. Cleverness can serve any master. A clever person can defend a prison more efficiently. Epinoia is different. It is the capacity to notice that the voice giving orders inside you may not be the deepest voice you possess. It is the sudden space between an impulse and obedience. It is the question that appears before the inherited answer can close around it. It is the recognition that a life can be socially successful and spiritually absent. Think of a truth you delayed admitting. Perhaps you knew a relationship had become dishonest. Perhaps you knew a belief survived only because losing it would threaten belonging. Perhaps you knew that the ambition driving you was not desire but fear wearing the mask of purpose. Before you explained that truth away, there was often a brief, quiet contact with it. That contact is not proof that a goddess spoke to you. It is, however, the kind of interior opening the old myth helps us name. And this is only one fragment of something much larger. The complete path is in the pinned comment. Now listen closely. The return of Sophia is therefore easy to miss. People expect thunder and overlook the interruption. They expect certainty and overlook the honest question. They expect supernatural power and overlook the moment a repeated pattern becomes visible. If the rulers of the myth depend on sleep, then the smallest act of conscious seeing is already a disturbance in their order. But there is a trap at the entrance. The ego can steal the language of awakening. It can turn a moment of recognition into a crown. It can say, now you are different from everyone else. Now you are one of the chosen. Now every disagreement proves that others are asleep. This is why the first sign of Sophia cannot be intensity alone. Fear is intense. Vanity is intense. Delusion can be intense. Wisdom is known by what it reorganizes. Ask what changed after the insight. Did it make you more truthful or merely more dramatic? Did it make you more capable of listening or more certain that nobody could teach you anything? Did it deepen responsibility or provide a sacred excuse for avoiding it? Sophia does not flatter the identity that recognition is trying to free. The earliest Christians who wrote these myths lived among competing claims about revelation, authority, and salvation. Their texts survived in fragments, copies, and codices hidden for centuries. We should not pretend that every school agreed. The diversity is part of the evidence. Yet, the persistence of Sophia shows that something in her story answered a deep problem. How can divine light be present in a world governed by ignorance, and how can the human being remember it? The return can also be recognized by a change in the quality of questions. At first, a question asks for reassurance. Tell me what to believe so uncertainty will stop. Later, the question asks for exposure. Show me what I am protecting by demanding certainty. The words may look similar, but the second question places identity at risk. That risk is why true inquiry is rare. There is no need to turn this into an apocalypse timetable. Ancient myths speak through cosmic drama because cosmic drama can hold experiences larger than ordinary description. A return of wisdom may therefore be understood as a religious hope, a symbolic awakening, or both, depending on the seeker's framework. What matters for the practice is whether the interpretation expands responsibility or excuses it. The answer begins here. Wisdom does not return by conquering the world from outside. She returns when the world can no longer define the total boundary of what you are able to know. The next question is more difficult. Once that opening appears, how do you know whether you are hearing wisdom or merely hearing a more sophisticated form of the old self? The old self rarely announces itself as the old self. It changes clothing. When religion controls you, it speaks as duty. When ambition controls you, it speaks as destiny. When resentment controls you, it speaks as justice. When spiritual vanity controls you, it speaks as awakening. This is why the return of Sophia cannot be measured by how many sacred words enter your vocabulary. It must be measured by the kind of consciousness those words produce. The secret book of John describes a counterfeit spirit associated with forgetfulness, misdirection, and the forces of fate. Within the manuscript, this belongs to a mythic cosmology. In a modern symbolic reading, it can help us examine any pattern that imitates our own voice while keeping us unable to observe it. The counterfeit does not always tell an obvious lie. Its most effective statement is a partial truth arranged to protect an unconscious identity. Suppose someone has wounded you. The truth is that harm occurred. The counterfeit adds that your wound gives you perfect knowledge of the other person and permanent permission to become cruel. Suppose you have questioned an inherited doctrine. The truth is that authority can be mistaken. The counterfeit adds that every authority is false and only your private interpretation is pure. Suppose you feel called toward a new path. The truth may be that your life needs change. The counterfeit adds that preparation, patience, and correction are beneath you. Sophia moves differently. She does not erase complexity to preserve your emotional position. She widens the field until you can see the wound, your reaction, the other person, the pattern, and the choice at the same time. This wider seeing may be less satisfying than certainty, but it is more liberating. It gives you somewhere to stand that is not identical with the first impulse. Here is the first practice for this video. Call it the 4 doors of readiness. The first door is interruption. When a strong conclusion appears, pause before defending it. The second door is origin. Ask, where did this conclusion come from? Observation, fear, imitation, memory, or desire. The third door is fruit. Ask what this conclusion makes possible in your behavior. The fourth door is surrender. Ask what part of your identity would have to change if the conclusion were incomplete. Do not answer quickly. Speed is one of the methods by which inherited identity prevents examination. A rapid answer often protects the self-image already in place. The pause is not emptiness. It is the workshop in which a reaction becomes a perception. There is a reason people who begin to awaken often feel temporarily homeless. Old meanings lose authority before new understanding becomes stable. Friends may think you are becoming distant. Institutions may interpret questions as betrayal. Your own mind may beg for a new system that promises immediate certainty. This interval is dangerous, but it is also sacred. It is the space in which wisdom can form without being forced into the mold of the previous prison. The Gospel of Truth, a Valentinian text, speaks of ignorance through images of nightmare, fear, and forgetfulness. Error has power while the Father is unknown. When knowledge arrives, the nightmare begins to dissolve. This is not the same mythology as every passage in the secret book of John, yet it offers a complementary insight. The prison is sustained not only by external rulers, but by the absence of recognition. That is why fragments eventually become insufficient. One insight may expose a lie, but a path is needed to rebuild a life. One powerful video may awaken emotion, but emotion alone cannot create discernment. One manuscript may reveal a hidden cosmology, but without practice it can become another object the ego collects. The seeker who senses this is not asking for entertainment. the seeker is asking how recognition becomes stable, there is also a cost to remaining at the threshold. Each time you see a pattern and deliberately return to sleep, the pattern becomes easier to obey. Each time you exchange perception for belonging, the borrowed identity becomes more expensive to question. No divine punishment is required. Repetition itself becomes the chain. Yet every honest pause works in the opposite direction. Each time you admit that a cherished explanation may be incomplete, the witness grows stronger. Each time you correct yourself without collapsing into shame, wisdom gains a human form. Each time you choose what is true over what makes you appear right, the return moves from mythology into action. The four doors are not a test you pass once. The same belief can move through them differently as life changes. An answer that was honest at one stage may become a defense at another. Readiness, therefore, includes the willingness to revisit what once felt settled. And this leads to the second sign. Sophia does not merely reveal what is false, she restores the capacity to create without repeating the architecture of the rulers. To understand that, we must look at why her myth is a story of both fracture and restoration. A common mistake is to imagine awakening as an escape from responsibility. The world is false, therefore nothing matters. The rulers are ignorant, therefore ordinary life is beneath us. Matter is lower, therefore the body can be neglected. These conclusions have appeared in modern retellings, but they flatten the complexity of ancient Gnostic traditions. Even texts that criticize the world do not invite the seeker to become unconscious inside it. Knowledge is demonstrated by a transformed relation to life. Sophia is not only the figure who descends, she is also the figure whose movement makes restoration necessary. Her story asks what happens when power and knowledge become separated, when creation proceeds without full relation, and when an incomplete being mistakes its limited horizon for the whole. These are cosmic images, but they repeat wherever a person acts from a fragment and calls the fragment total. Consider a decision made from unexamined fear. Fear may have valid information, it can alert you to danger. But when fear becomes the entire horizon, it creates a world in its own image. Every stranger becomes a threat. Every delay becomes rejection. Every correction becomes humiliation. Like an ignorant ruler, the fragment announces, "There is nothing beyond me." The return of Sophia interrupts that announcement. It does not destroy the frightened part. It places the frightened part back into relation with a larger field of awareness. This is why integration is a better sign of wisdom than spiritual excitement. Wisdom allows the fragment to speak without allowing it to become God. And I need to pause here for a moment, because what I just revealed, the way Sophia returns by restoring the fragments of consciousness to a greater field of recognition, is exactly why I created the Inner Sanctum. It is not another collection of videos. It is a private Gnostic sanctuary where we walk the 13 aeons of Sophia in order together. Inside you will find guided teachings, daily gnosis, meditations, oracle transmissions, spiritual practices, and a protected circle of seekers who are actually living the path. If you have been watching these videos and sensing that every fragment is pointing towards something larger, the complete journey continues inside the Inner Sanctum. The link is in the pinned comment or scan the QR code on your screen. Now stay with me, because the next revelation is the one most people never hear. The third sign of Sophia is creative responsibility. After perception exposes a false pattern, you are asked to make something different. This may be a boundary, a conversation, a disciplined habit, a repaired promise, or a new way of relating to your own body. Recognition that produces no new form remains incomplete. This is where many seekers stop. They enjoy unveiling the lie, but they do not want the labor of building beyond it. Criticism feels like freedom because it breaks an old image, yet freedom also requires form. If you leave a prison and reproduce its hierarchy in every new group, the outer walls changed while the architecture remained. Ask a more demanding question. What am I creating from the truth I claim to have recognized? If your knowledge of Sophia produces only posts, arguments, and private superiority, then the old ruler may simply be speaking through a new symbol. If it produces patience, courage, precision, and a greater ability to protect what is vulnerable, then wisdom has begun to take flesh. A second micro-practice can make this visible. Think of one pattern you have recently exposed. Name it in a single sentence. Now complete another sentence. Because I see this, the next form I must create is, do not choose a grand mission. Choose the nearest honest form. Send the message. Keep the boundary. Read the source. Rest the body. Admit the error. Begin the work. The return is not proven by what you feel while listening. It is proven by what becomes possible after listening. This is the difference between spiritual consumption and initiation. Consumption gives the self another experience. Initiation asks the self to reorganize around a truth it can no longer deny. The ancient sources are rare not merely because manuscripts were lost. They are rare because the mode of attention required to receive them is rare. Anyone can repeat that Sophia fell. Fewer people will ask where their own intelligence has become separated from relation. Anyone can call the world a prison. Fewer will examine the ways they imprison others through certainty. Anyone can speak of remembrance. Fewer will change a habit that depends on forgetting. The fourth sign is therefore humility without passivity. Humility is not shrinking. It is remaining teachable in the presence of what you have not yet integrated. Passivity says, I can do nothing. Humility says, I do not see the whole, but I am responsible for the part now visible. Something remarkable happens when this posture becomes stable. The seeker no longer needs every experience to confirm a spiritual identity. Silence can remain silence. A dream can be meaningful without becoming prophecy. A coincidence can invite reflection without becoming a command. The mind becomes both open and disciplined. That balance is one of the clearest signs that Sophia is not being used as a mask for hunger. Creation also reveals whether the insight belongs to the whole person. If the mind understands but the body remains permanently overruled, the new form is still divided. If compassion expands but every practical limit disappears, relation has not become wiser. The created form must be able to endure time, consequence, and the needs of more than one fragment. But there is still one obstacle more powerful than false doctrine. It is the fear that if you follow recognition far enough, you will lose the people, roles, and structures that have allowed you to belong. The return of Sophia passes directly through that fear. Belonging can protect life, or it can protect sleep. Human beings are formed in relationship. We learn language, trust, and identity through others. There is nothing spiritually mature about pretending we need nobody. Yet because belonging is so deep, it can become the most efficient guard at the door of recognition. A group does not have to forbid questions openly. It only has to make the cost of asking them feel like exile. This is why some truths arrive first as bodily tension. The mouth agrees while the chest contracts. The person smiles while the stomach tightens. The mind recites the approved answer while another layer remains awake. The body is not infallible, but it often registers conflict before the social identity permits language. Try this now. Recall a situation in which you said yes while something in you knew the answer was no. Do not judge yourself. Notice where the memory appears in the body. Then imagine speaking the honest answer with calm precision, without aggression, and without apology for existing. What fear rises first? Rejection, ridicule, abandonment, the loss of an image. That fear reveals the gate through which belonging has been governing perception. The return of Sophia does not demand reckless destruction of relationships. Wisdom does not confuse impulsive rupture with courage. Sometimes the mature act is to speak. Sometimes it is to wait, gather knowledge, and prepare. Sometimes it is to leave. Sometimes it is to remain while refusing the old role. The question is not whether the action looks dramatic. The question is whether it emerges from clarity rather than compulsion. The ancients used the language of aeons, powers, fullness, deficiency, and remembrance. We translate these images too quickly when we reduce them to psychology. The texts were making metaphysical claims within their own worlds. Yet a symbolic application does not erase that history. It allows the myth to become a mirror without pretending the mirror is the original manuscript. When the myth says that an ignorant ruler declares himself the only God, it offers an image of authority, unable to imagine what exceeds it. That pattern appears in institutions, families, ideologies, and individual minds. Every system says, in one form or another, there is nothing beyond my categories. Sophia returns wherever that claim is exposed. Before I reveal the final piece, I want to speak directly to those of you who have stayed until this moment. You have watched video after video on this channel. You have felt Sophia pulling. You have recognized the signs. And somewhere beneath thought, you already know that these teachings are not isolated ideas. They are parts of a path. The Inner Sanctum was created for exactly this moment. It is a private Gnostic sanctuary where we walk the 13 aeons of Sophia in order together. Inside, you receive the complete path, daily gnosis, guided meditations, oracle transmissions, spiritual practices, and a protected community where you can ask questions, share your experiences, and be witnessed without the noise of public platforms. There are no mandatory live calls, no cameras, no need to perform your spirituality for anyone. You can enter quietly, study at your own rhythm, and allow the path to unfold from within. This is not for those who simply want more content. It is for those who are ready to stop collecting fragments and begin living the path. The current access details are available through the pinned comment and the description, or you can scan the QR code on your screen right now. And now, let me give you the final revelation, because this is what ties everything together. The fifth sign of Sophia is the recovery of sacred proportion. The ego takes one moment and makes it everything. Shame takes one failure and makes it identity. Fear takes one danger and makes it the future. Desire takes one absence and makes it the meaning of life. Wisdom restores scale. It does not deny the part. It refuses to let the part become the whole. This is why Sophia can feel like grief before she feels like liberation. When proportion returns, you see how much time was given to what could never satisfy. You see relationships maintained by fear, ambitions built to silence wounds, and beliefs defended because they kept an old self intact. Grief is not evidence that the path is wrong. It may be the emotional cost of no longer lying about what was lost. But grief without direction can become another identity. The next movement is consecration. Ask what the loss has made you capable of protecting. Ask what the mistake has taught you to recognize. Ask what kind of presence you can now offer another person because you know the architecture of forgetting from within. The return of Sophia is not nostalgia for a pure state you once possessed. It is the creation of a more conscious relation after fragmentation has been seen. You do not return by becoming who you were before the wound. You return by becoming someone able to carry knowledge through the wound without worshiping it. There is a severe cost to postponing this movement, not because Sophia punishes delay, but because every unexamined pattern recruits more of life. A lie requires supporting lies. A false identity requires environments that never challenge it. A fear protected for years becomes a theology. The longer recognition is negotiated away, the more of the world must be arranged to prevent its return. Those who have remained this far are often the ones who already know fragments are not enough. They have had the insight, lost it, found it again, and watched the old architecture rebuild itself. This is not failure. It is evidence that awakening must become a rhythm rather than an event. The path must be practiced until recognition has somewhere to live. The final revelation begins with a reversal. We have spoken as though Sophia were approaching humanity, but in every moment described here, wisdom was already present as the capacity to recognize. What moved was your relation to it. What returned was not the light. What returned was your availability to the light. Sacred proportion also restores humor. The ego cannot laugh at itself because every image must remain final. And that changes the question completely. Are you ready for Sophia to return? Or are you ready to stop abandoning the place where she has been waiting? Stay with that reversal. Sophia did not vanish in the way an object disappears from a room. In the myths, her light becomes mixed with lower conditions, obscured by ignorance, and involved in the drama of restoration. The human parallel is not that your deepest awareness was removed. It is that attention became loyal to everything except the awareness capable of seeing. Place both feet on the ground. Let your eyes rest on one ordinary object. Do not name it for a few seconds. Notice color, edge, shadow, and space before the mind turns the object into a category. In that brief interval, experience is present before the inherited label completes it. This is not mystical proof. It is a small demonstration that perception is larger than the words used to organize it. Now bring to mind one sentence you use to define yourself. I am the responsible one. I am the outsider. I am damaged. I am strong. I am the person who never gives up. Do not argue with the sentence. Place it beside the object you just observed. See that the sentence is also a form appearing in awareness. It may contain truth. It is not the total field in which it appears. This is the practical meaning of readiness. Readiness is the ability to let an identity become visible without immediately rebuilding the world around it. It is the capacity to hear correction without experiencing annihilation. It is the discipline of allowing insight to produce form. It is the courage to belong without purchasing belonging through self-betrayal. The return of Sophia can therefore be recognized through 5 movements. First, the familiar spell fractures. Second, the counterfeit voice is observed. Third, recognition becomes creative responsibility. Fourth, belonging is purified by truth. Fifth, proportion returns, and the fragment is no longer allowed to pretend it is the whole. None of these requires theatrical spirituality. They can occur while washing a cup, answering a message, reading a difficult page, or refusing to repeat a family pattern. The cosmic story becomes credible in life only when its symbols alter the smallest decisions. This is also why historical care matters. The Secret Book of John, the Gospel of Truth, and other Gnostic texts do not speak with one voice. Sophia changes across schools and manuscripts. A responsible seeker does not erase those differences to create a convenient modern system. Instead, the differences teach humility. Wisdom was never contained by one formula, even among those who devoted their lives to naming her. So when someone claims perfect possession of Sophia, be cautious. Wisdom that cannot be questioned has already taken the posture of the ignorant ruler. A living relation to Sophia remains capable of study, correction, and wonder. It does not fear evidence. It does not need every mystery resolved. It knows that reverence and precision can inhabit the same mind. Here is the final practice. For the next 24 hours, whenever a strong reaction appears, do not ask first whether it is right or wrong. Ask, what part of me is trying to become the whole? Then ask, what larger field has this part forgotten? The first question reveals the fragment. The second invites Sophia. You may discover that anger forgot grief. Ambition forgot rest. Loyalty forgot truth. Independence forgot relationship. Spiritual certainty forgot humility. The goal is not to eliminate the first part. It is to return it to proportion. Subscribe to OmniSoul if you are ready to continue this path through a different kind of listening. In the next journey, we will stand at the threshold described in an ancient revelation to James, where the soul is questioned after death and must answer without the identity of the body. The questions are simple. Their meaning is not, Sophia is returning wherever the part remembers the whole. She is returning wherever attention stops serving the loudest voice and begins serving the deepest recognition. She is returning wherever a human being can say, this pattern shaped me, but it is not the source of me. The return has already begun, not in the sky, not in a date, not in the promise of a new institution. It has begun in the moment you can see the room, the walls, the familiar voices, and the inherited answers, and still know that none of them contains the final measure of your soul. Readiness also includes the ability to remain ordinary after a powerful insight. The mind may want to redesign identity immediately, announce a new mission, or interpret every event as confirmation. Wisdom can wait. It lets an insight pass through sleep, work, conversation, and contradiction before deciding what the insight means. This waiting is not unbelief. It is respect for the difference between a seed and a finished tree. A true seed does not fear time. What is false often demands immediate loyalty because examination would expose its weakness. The return of Sophia therefore produces patience with mystery and impatience with dishonesty. The seeker becomes slower to make cosmic claims and faster to correct a concrete lie. And if today was the day you realize the fragments are no longer enough, the inner sanctum is waiting. The private path continues in the pinned comment. I will see you inside. The return is also communal, though never reducible to mass agreement. One person learns to question without humiliating. Another learns to set a boundary without hatred. Another refuses to turn private revelation into public control. Together, such acts create conditions in which wisdom can circulate without becoming an institution of fear. This kind of community does not require identical metaphysics. It requires shared disciplines of honesty, source awareness, correction, and respect for experience. The ancient schools differed because living traditions interpret. The danger begins when interpretation is hidden behind the claim that no interpretation occurred. Remember that the most persuasive counterfeit is often a real spiritual need attached to a false method. The need for belonging is real. The method of self-abandonment is false. The need for meaning is real. The method of grandiosity is false. Sophia does not shame the need. She separates it from the structure that exploited it.